Good afternoon, everyone. Rich Swerbinski with the Mortgage Collaborative here once again with the last week in Mortgage Today, our weekly walk through all the latest news and happenings in the mortgage industry. Each week, I select one of our lender members to be my co-host, and back in the co-pilot seat for, God, this has got to be like the fifth or sixth time. CEO of Eustace Mortgage, TMC board member, longtime TMC believer and member, Kate deKay. Kate, great to see you.
Hey, Rich, thanks for having me.
And if you couldn't tell by our opening show banter, Kate in the city of New Orleans and huge Saints fan, just getting caught up on the off-season trials and tribs of the Saints. But Kate, maybe just a little background on Eustace for our listeners and a little mini profile of the company before we get into it.
Sure, I'd love to. So here we are, and we have been in business for over 65 years. So I always like to lead there as an independent mortgage banker. That's something I'm really proud of. We have most of our footprint here in Texas and Louisiana, headquartered out of New Orleans, Louisiana, the home of our lovely Saints. And we've been steadily growing year over year. So we're licensed in almost 20 states now, brick and mortar, and a little bit less than half of those, and just continuing on our growth path. I laugh at our goals because they've been to stay flat, which we've been successful in doing since 2020. And I think that was a big accomplishment for us, and we did that through growth. So we're primarily retail, shop, and tiny bit of wholesale, for a little bit of background about kind of what we're really good at, and that's retail.
And you had the Final Four there. That's right. This past weekend.
We did,
great
yeah.
game last night. Great
Yeah.
Final Four games and a lot of shots at Bourbon Street. I saw Cafe Demand, some shots at that establishment and people chomping on beignets.
It's definitely nice to have some tourism back in the city. I've been seeing people walking around. You can tell they're here for the game, so it's been nice.
Good stuff. Well, let's go ahead and get into it. And we're kind of talking in the lead in, like, never a dull moment in the mortgage industry. It seems like we're so busy and crazy, and it's tough to focus on non-pipeline things. And now things have slowed down, and the climate's just changing in general. And like the underpinning of all that is just rising rates and rising home values. Hasn't really depressed. I feel like just very, very strong purchase demand out there. The inventory side of it is restrictive, obviously, but just your general thoughts on the business climate as we head into the second quarter of 22 here.
Yeah, it's never a dull moment in mortgage. Given the 65-year background, I at least feel like we have some understanding of the ebbs and flows that we all experience in this industry. We go from crazy busy in a really positive way, although we're always busy, it seems. Even when you go into kind of this direction, then you're busy for different reasons and solving different problems than you were before. So it's always fun. Luckily, I like a wild ride, so here we are. But with mortgage rates, it's a lot of what everyone was expecting. I think the speed for which they've risen is a little bit less what people were expecting. And I think it's a combination of just the speed in which rates are increasing and all of the other factors that we have coming into play with inflation, invasion in Ukraine, et cetera, that just make this market really unpredictable.
Yeah, it's, you already got the inventory headwinds and, the rates, to your point, rising just quicker than we thought. Every year, it seems like the economists predict a slow ascent of the 30-year fixed rate into something in the mid to the high fours. We kind of got that very quickly here in Q1, and further pinch on just affordability. When you couple that with home values that are going up. I mean, the markets you're in Texas and Louisiana, I would imagine same thing. Probably not a lot of homes under 300,000-400,000 that are out there to be bought.
For sure. Affordability is a whole nother conversation, which I know we've had numerous times in these chats before. You throw in what we're seeing with inventory right now and just the lack of, and you really kind of throw a lot of those particular programs out of the window, because unfortunately sellers aren't even willing to accept them. To purchase a home, you have to throw everything at the seller as far as what your offer looks like, and that more government loan products, I feel like, is also suffering. And with inventory, we saw such a glutton of inventory pre-boom, and then everything kind of just went flat, and now builders just can't keep up the pace. And even though it's certainly gotten to the point that they realize, okay, the demand is there. So, 2020 builders see the demand, but now everybody's just still trying to catch up. And that's just the common thread I hear from all over, internally and external, is people, the buyers are there. We have pre-approvals out the wazoo, but there's no inventory to even purchase. So.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. And of note, over the course of the last week, the Dallas Federal Reserve made some big headlines in our industry when they came out and suggested that the word that terrifies everybody or associated with real estate, bubble, a bubble could be brewing, citing that just signs that home prices are, quote unquote, becoming unhinged from fundamentals, like they did in the bubble that preceded the '08 crash. They then went on to say that they were not fearful that we would have a repeat of all the really collateral damage that we saw in '07 and '08 due to stronger fundamentals in other areas. But also going on to say that our evidence points to abnormal U.S. housing market behavior for the first time since the boom of the early 2000s, citing data that they use to measure what they call exuberance on property markets. So got a lot of people talking for sure. And, at this point, I've been talking about this for a long time. It's starting to worry me because I don't see anything that is going to, I think that the pandemic created housing demand. I think it just boosted housing demand nationally, just kind of organically, like the home and where people live, because they spent a lot of time in it, and more people are now working from home. So it just boosted this demand. And then we already had inventory and supply issues. And so we keep, getting all these reports about, there's no supply, and prices keep going up, rates are up, but people still keep buying the houses that are out there. I'm a little worried that if this keeps happening, something's got to give, right?
I'm still going to stick with just your early assumptions, which is I'm still on the train of it's home price growth, but I don't see the bubble. Now, I suppose if we continue to see just and what we're seeing right now, if this extends for a year, 2 years, which we're going to at least be in this for a little bit longer. So I can certainly see a bubble if we are increasing that much, double digits over the next 2 years. But I have to still believe it's just price growth and that we're not in a bubble, because number one, we don't have that inventory. So if people are still going to be around to purchase, which we know they will, because that demographic and age range that are out purchasing now, and that MBA projected is the reason why they've increased kind of their purchase percentage and their purchase business over 2022. We know that group of folks still exist. We know they are still going to need houses. We know that inventory is a struggle. But I don't see that we get into a bubble unless things just completely take a turn. We don't have the crazy products. So I think we're just at a really unhealthy stage of inventory, which is causing the bidding wars. Hopefully we'll see some relief there soon, and we just won't create too much price growth based off of those bidding wars. And appraisals will certainly keep that in check to an extent.
Yeah, and the word, many great points there, and the word bubble is synonymized with what happened in '07 and '08, where we had things way crazier than anything going on right now that led to a really massive correction. People that put little to no money down and saw the value of their home plummet, really becoming prisoners in their own homes, and negative equity, and really a lot of people just walking away from homes that they owed far more on than they were worth. Different dynamics now. People have lots of equity. Home prices have been going up very aggressively. But I think to me, the most likely scenario is values keep going up for, we've been at this like 10 to 20% clip for a couple of years now, annualized. And then there's some sort of correction that's not catastrophic, but, catches maybe some people on the back end of that off guard. But going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. And
as we always, we should laugh at ourselves for trying to predict anything, because, nothing goes as planned in the world or in our industry. I mean, you can't predict COVID-19. You can't predict a Russian invasion of Ukraine. So as new variables come in play, of course, this conversation could be completely different in a few months from now. And we say, oh no, there's a bubble, but I'm going to stay on it's not a bubble, and we should just continue to see maybe that 20% price growth.
Yeah, the only thing that you can predict in this industry is that whatever we predict is going to be wrong. It seems like that's it. My every year I do a little predictions column at the end of the year. I'm like, this year I'm just like, screw it. I'm making this thing completely satirical. At least it can make people laugh. And like, sadly though, some of the stuff in there that I meant to be satire, like some of that stuff may actually end up coming true. God help us all. So what else do we have in the news here, Kate? Interesting report that came out just a couple of days ago. CoreLogic hosts to lots and lots of real estate data with some interesting trends just on national movement. It was really the most notable part of the report was less home buying, people under 30 because of the aforementioned affordability issues. And then some trends of home buyers under 30 moving from the coast, from California, from Florida, more to the middle part of the country, either mountain states or Midwest states, like a couple of the ones that you're located in that have more favorable business climates, maybe lower taxes, a lot of migration to states in Utah and Idaho and Texas. And but I think this is another byproduct of the pandemic. We're seeing just population movement across America based on changing preferences and the different climates, real estate and business in different states across America.
Yeah, just like we talked about, we can't predict things a few years ago. I mean, I couldn't agree more. It's a lot of this is caused by COVID. I don't necessarily think it's a bad cause from COVID, given the locations that people feel like they can move now. They can work from anywhere model is most employers' models at this point. So, and especially for that age range that kind of pushes more towards freedom. So I think, people realize they can move anywhere. And then just like you said, affordability, it's going to be a lot easier for someone to purchase a home in these areas at that age range than it is going to be in California or somewhere along the East Coast. So they see it as an affordability and quality of life play, and it makes sense.
This is the last week in Mortgage Today. I'm Rich Swerbinsky with the Mortgage Collaborative. This week, joined in the co-host seat by the CEO of Eustace Mortgage, Kate deKay. And another piece of news that broke this week, something that the tea leaves have been out there for on a while now, and that's looks like the government's going to get involved on the appraisal side of our business, and a couple different reports that have come out over the course of the last several months, just really kind of indicating that the appraisal industry in America, not a lot of sound oversight, certainly some discrepancies, whites and non-whites, similar properties that were appraising different, and some, potential cases of just the home value bias that we've seen. So a few things going on in this arena, but there's a bill that is in Congress, a draft bill that would call for the scrapping of the, I guess, overseers of the appraisal industry right now, called the Appraisal Foundation, and to replace it with an independent federal agency. I don't know if you've been following along on any of that news, and if you got any thoughts on that.
So I find it pretty interesting kind of where, or the lack of our growth, I should say, on the appraisal side over the last years. You know, it's terrible, but I can't even remember when they implemented the UCD, where we're, uploading all of the information in an XML format. So with the intent of getting more of the appraisal waivers, or having the agencies having more information so they can make better decisions for the housing market. And I feel like a lot of that comes into play with what we're seeing right now. And automation shouldn't be able to have a bias, although I know I've also seen that automation can be biased. So that's, all very interesting. But if we're, talking about anything that is not going to be biased, it should be automation. So I'm definitely disappointed at the level that we have not gotten to as far as appraisal waivers, or, with the changes to a desktop appraisal. I don't know about most others out there, but I really feel like that was an ineffective change, or something that agencies thought was going to be a big win for us, but really did not affect us at all. Meaning appraisers are still going to charge the same amount. It's less valuable data with those desktop appraisals, and I don't think they'll be widely used. So I certainly think that there is room to have multiple changes around appraisals and how we do them now. And, I'm all for an agency or a group that would come about that would help the bias, and also just improve the way we're utilizing the data that we certainly have to have at this point.
Yeah, I think, normally, I mean, government getting involved in anything with an industry that you're in is typically not good news. But in this case, I think you're right? I mean, it's to me, so much more of this should be automated. There's so much data on housing, especially all the refinances that have been done now these last couple of years, and in person and desktop or drive-by appraisals that have been done. It seems like we should be building a national database on home values that would lead to more appraisal waivers, more desktops, true, effective, efficiency saving appraisal options. And it's like the two part, like when the pandemic first hit, I remember talking on calls like these, like, okay, this is obviously a horrible thing that's going on right now, but as it relates to our industry, e-close should be fast tracked, right? This should, by the end of 2020, everybody should be e-closing everything. That never happened. And then the other piece was, appraisal waivers. We're starting to see more from the beginning of the pandemic, and all these talk of more desktops, and it just never really played out how we had hoped it would.
No. Certainly agreement on not liking government to jump in, but I think there are certain situations that, of course, if we can better practice without putting crazy oversight, isn't that always the key, but also hard to accomplish.
Yeah. And, I will say we've now had a chance to hear her speak a few times, got a chance to meet her and have breakfast with her at our conference, the director of FHFA, Sandra Thompson. I'm certainly a tell it like it is guy, and I'm just very impressed by her. She seems very genuine. She seems incredibly knowledgeable. She seems very, very tuned in to what's going on in housing in America. She's reaching out to mortgage lenders. Like, she couldn't accept our invite quick enough to come out and speak at our conference, because she wants to hear from the people that are financing the American dream. Like, what a novel concept, and it makes me hopeful. When you see the government getting involved in things like where it could make sense for them to get a little bit more involved, like appraisals and modernizing that whole thing, because you have housing leaders that seem to be more tuned in to our side of the industry. Yeah,
and I'm going to say obsessed with Sandra Thompson now. That sounds a little crazy, but just in interviewing her for the conference, however many months back, not this last one, which I know she was able to attend with us in person. She is definitely a breath of fresh air for what we needed in that department. And I feel much more confident with her at the helm of what change may look like, that it will be, for the positive and not just to add layers to us, but to actually create the change that is typically what the person's intent is. It just doesn't come out that way. I definitely think that she is willing to listen to what IMBs and just any mortgage banker has to say, and make change based off of that.
Absolutely. And, we were able to have breakfast with her the morning before she spoke. Kate's on our lender board and invited our lender board. She wanted to have breakfast with our lender board of directors. She genuinely wanted to hear feedback from CEOs, Kate, like you, running company for 65 years, and ways that from her seat, they can, and she can help play a role in making housing and housing finance smoother for your customers, Americans, home buyers. And we haven't had a lot of that with our housing leaders in America recent history here.
Shove stuff down our throats and then we have to figure it out as we go.
This is changing. In 2 weeks you have to prepare though, right? Yeah.
Right. A day, tomorrow, effective. No, and I know one of the topics we were considering in this conversation was FHFA discussing the end of conservatorship again for GSEs. And, my comments to something like that is a lot different now than previously, which would be, I feel like she will do it the correct way. And it's not going to be that change that we talked about that's, effective the next day. It's going to be with communication with folks like us, and hopefully many steps in place to get to a healthy market where the end of conservatorship makes sense.
She seems like the type of person and candidate that even if a Republican were to win the White House in a little over a couple of years, that she could still serve on. We've seen, presidents in the past. I mean, it seems like the political environment's just so rancorous right now. But like back at Bush and Clinton, like they kept on the good people that were the opposite party from them, that were heads of departments or divisions. So maybe that'll happen. You mentioned that, yeah, she made some news, Sandra, this week by coming out and saying that she's preparing the GSEs for the end of conservatorship. And she has to do that. I mean, at some point, it's going to make sense for that to happen. To your point, I would argue not now. But that's the other thing I like about her is she's well bent. Like Calabria is just like, get the hell or high water, get the GSEs out from under government conservatorship, which would have been, I believe, a disaster. But she's trying to balance it all. She's trying safety and soundness and to prepare the GSEs, for what lies ahead. At the same time, trying to use Fannie and Freddie to, if it's going to be what I think we'll have coming, will be a change and a reduction in loan level price adjustments. She didn't promise anything there, but hinted that, she made like a joke about how they've been the same since it's been like 13 years or something since they've, has nothing changed. Everything's changed except the LLPAs in our industry. So it feels like something, and I feel like the whole cash out, the second home and the investment property pullbacks, that was a precursor to probably some reductions in the LLPAs, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. Government right now is potentially, a very big variable in our industry, not only with things that are already in the works, but if this home price, my fear is that the home price thing, if we get to June and home prices are still appreciating 20% annualized, we're looking at essentially 50% home appreciation in 3 years, that it becomes a Main Street issue, it becomes a voter issue, and it's going to cause all these politicians that have no clue what they're doing to, start talking about it and mucking
up houses, or who knows? Yeah, I do feel it's unfortunate though, because we are to the point though, even I had a call with Freddie earlier, and it's a lot about affordability, but there is no ability to offer or have that be successful without inventory. Even in markets like New Orleans, where it's certainly available, it's just, we have to determine a way to be able to get there. And we're well behind in that. category too.
It is ironic. Like we at TMC, we have partnerships with Fannie and Freddie, and meet with them regularly, and their focus is like affordable lending and minorities and low to moderate income borrowers. But you just keep kind of coming like there's nothing for them to buy. There's no houses for them to buy. It feels like we're working backwards, and a lot of the good spirited things that Fannie and Freddie are looking to do, lower LLPAs or product, like, it would just further increase demand. When you kind of don't have any supply. But I don't like, it's a tough, like, I don't know, there's no good quick easy answers for the how do you make more $100,000 to $250,000 homes available in America.
Yeah, and here in New Orleans our inventory is aged. So, if there were houses to go for sale, kind of that affordability needs to be tacked on with the renovation financing, which we have been lucky enough to work with Freddie and some local housing agencies to have a program that we can offer. But it's a complex program. So, it takes a lot of consumer and referral partner education that we certainly have to get better at before I think that could even go anywhere.
Yeah, great point. And I think that's going to be a huge part of the market these next couple of years, just renovation and rehab loans for all the reasons you mentioned. So this is the last week in mortgage today. Rich Swerbinsky with the Mortgage Collaborative. I have a couple minutes left with the CEO of Eustace Mortgage, Kate deKay. Kate, it was great to see you at our conference a couple weeks ago. And I don't know, I always like to pick your brain on just, your thoughts on just the general business, your conversations with people, anything you took out of it that surprised you or reinforced things you were thinking or doing.
So it's funny, and I may have told you this story already, but we'll tell everybody else that's listening. So I unfortunately couldn't arrive until late, and I was walking into lunch on Monday, and room full of people. Here I am thinking I know a ton of people in the Mortgage Collaborative, and it took me a minute to find a table of people that I knew. But even with that said, it still felt the same. Whereas, the rooms and the speakers and everybody's very engaging. Everybody keeps very open about their business practices and what they're doing. And so you still have that great vibe in all the various meetings. And of course, information flowing, which is the key to me for the Mortgage Collaborative. And this year, I was lucky to host judge the tech fund meeting, which I thought was another great way. Y'all do the lightning rounds and kind of other ways for the vendors to be able to show what they have going on. But these are much more up and coming vendors and partners. And I thought that was a great way for people that didn't get to sit in that meeting thinking, it was more of a tech judge. It was also a great way to see products that are kind of just starting out, be able to get in an early stage.
Kind of a look behind the curtain, the vendors that are going to be calling on you 6 to 12 months from now. Right. Some emerging stuff. But no, I thought that was really cool. And that's going to be something we do just perpetually, the kind of tech startup showcase that we did that you were nice enough to judge for us. And I thought that was really well done. And it was a nice addition. So, but excellent. Well, Kate, always enjoy talking about the industry with you. I appreciate the many, many things you do to support TMC. And thanks for co-hosting with me this week.
Thanks, Rich. It was good seeing you.
Great seeing you. And to our attendees, thanks as always for spending 30 minutes with us. We're here every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern with the Last Week in Mortgage Today. With our live audience, and we'll load these videos to YouTube shortly after they complete, and then podcast as well, where the majority of you consume it. So don't forget to follow TMC Connect on Apple or Spotify, and you can have all our great programming flow right into your podcast feed. So until next week, have a great rest of the week, everyone. Take care.